watching The End Zone, sponsored by Lucky Star Casino.
Welcome to another edition of The End Zone, along with TJ Eckert. I am Colby Daniels, and joining us by popular demand, or maybe unpopular demand, we don't know, is Eddie RADOSEVICH.
There's a demand. It might be to enter the portal,
but the man, the myth, the legend is back. Eddie, when we had you on the very first episode of The End Zone, we hadn't started SEC play yet. The season was in its infancy, right? A lot of excitement about how things would play out, and now the regular season has wrapped up. Welcome back, my friend.
Well, thank you. A lot has changed since then. There's no doubt about that.
That's right.
Man, it's been, we talked about before we started, maybe the worst college football season for our state ever?
It's been bad. It's been bad. It's been terrible. I mean, you have an offense in Norman that obviously had to be, kind of dealt with. He had to make moves, and then you get the Ben Arbuckle hire, and in Stillwater, it's been awful. It's been simply a terrible year.
Not
up
great.
in Tulsa's been terrible.
Yes, indeed.
Thunder basketball,
Yeah,
OU basketball maybe, but there's a lot of football to talk about.
I did hear somebody say after last weekend's games, Oklahoma State obviously lost to Colorado, OU loses to LSU. At least we can put this football season to bed, right?
Yeah.
Well, fast forward a few days, and the news cycle in college football in this state is still, off the charts crazy.
It's incredible. This past week, even with all the portal news and the portal news that's to come, it's been crazy. Now you have two new coordinators, or one new coordinator in Norman, two new coordinators coming to Stillwater, and probably entire new coaching staff in Tulsa. It's insane.
Yeah, I want to start there with Ben Arbuckle. What were your thoughts about the hire?
It's risky. I think that there was a certain level of comfort that came with Buster Faulkner. There was a certain level of comfort that came with Joe Craddock just because they had done it in the SEC. But I suppose if you're Brent Venables and you look at what they need to do, and especially explosive plays like Ben Arbuckle's been able to call for Washington State, and then even in his time with Western Kentucky, you might as well hit a home run or a grand slam. You got to swing the bat. This is a big swing, but if it does work, then you end up looking like a genius with the chances that you took. So it's a risky hire. I was surprised that that's the direction. Not necessarily surprised that it ended up being Arbuckle.
Sure.
He was in contention. We had talked about him for the last couple of weeks since really Seth Luttrell got fired. But at the same time, it's a risk. And he's 29. I understand the resume being probably not as experienced as a lot of people probably wanted it for this job, or maybe thought it was going to need to be for this job. But I think Brent said it best on Tuesday when he was hired by Bob to come in and take over the Oklahoma defense. He was 29 years old himself. So I think that if you're going to push back on the idea that age is just an item or whatever, it's just a number. It's going to be kind of fascinating to see how they can turn this thing around. Anything's better than, historically, statistically, one of the worst offenses in OU modern history.
Right.
I think a lot of people look at this hire and think Brent Venables' job is probably on the line with the success or failure of this hire. So from that standpoint, it does seem like a bit of a gamble given his overall resume and his youth.
Right.
I do fight back a little bit, though, with the whole, he's 29 years old thing, he can't have success. I think we've seen that proven wrong in college football. The other thing that somewhat annoys me is when people say, is an air raid going to work, right? He's from the air raid tree. Can that be successful? He's never coached in the SEC. He's made the most of what he has to work with, right? When people say, somebody is a specific thing, well, they were a specific thing at a specific place, right? He doesn't have the long resume to say he would be that everywhere. And sometimes you're an air raid team because you don't have the right tools to smash mouth football. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think that that's where you're going to look at Ben Arbuckle, and he's going to take a look at the personnel, obviously. Well, he'll have plenty of options in the transfer portal, what they have coming back. And I don't think this is going to be a deal that you look up, he's throwing the ball 70 times a game next year. You're not going to win very many games if you do that. I think he knows that. So I do think that they're going to run the ball. I think that, you kind of saw that with Lincoln and the way they were able to marry, the air raid, and then obviously having Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon, that changed things. We'll see. They have Xavier Robinson. They're going to have to probably get some answers in the running back room as well.
I think his line was personnel, then scheme.
Yeah.
I think I like that.
That's right.
Quickly talk about Jackson Arnold entering the transfer portal.
Not surprising. I think that was kind of not in the works, I guess, if you want to say. I think there was a lot of people that kind of looked at what he was able to do. And I think mutually, both Oklahoma and Jackson Arnold, they just need to get a blank slate. And for Jackson, I know that there's a lot of talent there. I think that you saw it at times this year. Oklahoma's offensive problems weren't especially or particularly because of Jackson Arnold. There was a lot of things. It was Brent, it was Seth, it was the entire product. So I'm kind of excited for him. He's going to get a new, kind of a new, fresh release on life, and we'll see where he ends up. I think that's the most interesting thing about it, is where he ends up in all this, because he's going to have a lengthy list of suitors. I know Georgia's already reached out. Mississippi State with Jeff Levy, who recruited him to Norman. But they had Michael Van Buren, who played really well as a true freshman this year, and I think he might be the future in Starkville. So it's going to be kind of fun to see what his options are. I know Auburn, Missouri, who ends up both those schools come down to Norman next year.
Yeah.
That would be fascinating if he ended up at one of those schools. But I wish the best for Jackson. He was always good to deal with, even going all the way back to Denton Geyer, and then obviously this year, which, I think he's a tough kid for what he was kind of put through this season.
Before we hit the OSU situation with the coaching staff, I got to ask, is John Mateer just a slam dunk to be the Sooners quarterback next season? I know the portal window doesn't officially open until December 9th, but I think when Arbuckle was hired, everybody just assumed that John Mateer is the next OU starting quarterback.
Yeah, it's kind of the elephant in the room, isn't it? It's like, okay, when's this kid going to enter the transfer portal? And I think that there's a good chance that does happen. We'll see what that situation is going to be. Does he want to play in the bowl game, wherever Washington State ends up at 8-4 this year? But I think in all heart of hearts, there's a lot of people in Norman that believe that he'll enter the transfer portal. Oklahoma's going to have to recruit him, obviously, but you would think his relationship with Ben Arbuckle would, maybe put them above everybody else that's going to be out there.
Plays a lot like Jackson Arnold, by the way, if you watch him play.
Yeah. He's a fun kid, and he's from Little Elm. He played in the same district as Jackson and Michael Hawkins back in high school at Little Elm, so it's kind of crazy that could all kind of come full circle here.
Would you rather put your name in the hat for the OSU offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator job? They're both open,
either one probably gets a membership to Carson Creek. So I think that'd be fine with me either way.
Yes.
Sign me up for that. Not surprise isn't the right word. It needed to happen, but just talk about historically bad from the Norman perspective. OSU on both sides of the ball is really bad.
Yeah, and I think that they certainly are going to have to kind of have some answers there. I know that the offense was maybe the most surprising thing in terms of what happened inside the state this season with all the guys that they had coming back, and then you have a defense that it was one of the worst in the country at the end of the day. So it's going to be interesting, because I think these are both big hires for Mike, obviously. Who knows if he's going to be on a hot seat or what that's necessarily going to be termed, but they got to go find some guys that have some answers, and then obviously you got to be able to recruit and be serious in the transfer portal, like a bunch of these other schools right now in the country.
Yeah. It would be one thing if you have the 83rd total offense and the 133rd total defense in a rebuilding year, but in a year where you returned as many players as they did and were one of the favorites to win the Big 12 and maybe go play in the college football playoff to go winless in conference play, no surprise to anyone that they ultimately had to pull the plug on those two spots.
It was the move you had to make.
Right, agreed.
Eddie RADOSEVICH is joining us, and we're going to talk college football playoff bracket. On the other side, you're watching The End Zone. All right, gentlemen, college football playoff bracket time. This is the last projected bracket, right? Because after this weekend, we will officially know what the college football playoff bracket is going to be in this initial year of the 12-team playoff. There's so many different angles, I think, to look at this thing from in terms of what this weekend is going to give us. And the first one I would throw at you guys, what happens in the ACC championship? Right now, SMU is the projected champion. They're in first place.
Right.
If Clemson beats SMU, do you guarantee that the Ponies are in this thing completely, or do they just fall out of, getting that conference champion spot and get one of the at-large bids?
That's tough. I don't know. However we get Alabama in, that's the goal. Let's just make sure Alabama gets in, and they are right now, and they'll find a way to stay in there. I don't know. What do you? Do you think it's possible if they lose or knocked out?
No, I think SMU's done if they don't win the AAC championship. It's going to be extremely hard for them to win that. And before last weekend, I would have thought that Clemson was going to be a shoo-in to get into this thing. They get beat by South Carolina in the final minute. Lenora Sellers scores on a 3rd and 16. But I think that game should be really, really good to see who ends up winning the ACC. It's still so weird to see SMU in the Atlantic Coast Conference. It doesn't make any sense.
No sense.
Some people argue that you shouldn't necessarily be penalized for making a championship game and then losing while others are sitting at home and maybe jumping you because they weren't good enough in the regular season. SMU's kind of in a unique situation, though, similar to maybe if Indiana was in the Big Ten championship, where you don't have a lot of quality games, so you're probably judged a little bit more harshly when you do actually match up against somebody that is a top 25 opponent.
Brett Lashley talked about it earlier this week with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman on 3, just in terms of you might have coaches that look at this and what happens with SMU this week, would you just sit a bunch of your players or not even try to make a conference championship game in case you're worried about losing it and then you're out of the big playoff?
That's crazy to think about, that you would be penalized for being good all season long,
Sure.
making your conference championship and then losing. And then, like you say, a team with 3 losses is
Alabama's just sitting there. Yeah, not doing anything.
Carnage can happen and nothing happens to them, which is crazy to think. That top left quadrant you were talking about during the break, like what a disaster that would be for Oregon.
If
like,
it stays this way,
if it
can you
stays that
imagine?
way.
I mean, you get the winner of either Ohio State or Tennessee. My gosh.
Congratulations.
And having to beat Ohio State for the second time at Autzen Stadium,
true.
which I think would be interesting. Well, I guess that would be a neutral site bowl, but in terms of Ohio State, I think they're the live dog right now. I know they played awful against Michigan last weekend, but that talent pool, if they can just not screw it up from a coaching standpoint and be a little bit more aggressive, Ryan Day, Will Howard, he could win a national championship still, which is insane to me to think after watching him play against Michigan.
A couple other interesting scenarios. I mean, Penn State loses to Oregon. Potentially, do they fall behind Ohio State, who's not playing? And then Georgia, if they lose to Texas, I mean, the SEC might not have one single home field advantage game in the opening round, which would be
Big
wild.
Dairy would love that with all the winter weather and all the stops that they could make up north. I mean, and you look at the weather projections, I think it is obviously going to be cold up there,
right?
Wherever those games are being played. But Georgia's another team that, like Georgia and Texas in the SEC championship game, is going to be, it's an unbelievable matchup. It's 2 best teams, in my opinion, maybe the 2 most complete teams in the country and what they've been able to do this year.
Really quick, should Alabama be in? Like I just glossed over that. Should they be in? I mean,
Give me the Canes. They're more fun.
Yeah.
Give me the
Miami,
Canes.
South Carolina.
I think
Ole
South
Miss.
Carolina is playing the best football of anybody in the
I agree.
country. They ended the season on a 6-game winning streak. For Shane Beamer to get that team to 9 wins, and they have a lot of talent, obviously, with that defensive line, but they might be the hottest team. I just don't know if they're going to be able to keep that logo out of the playoffs.
I will figure out the algorithm by the end of the show and let you guys know how the committee is going to get Alabama into that #1 spot. So stay tuned for that. That's still to come here on the End Zone. It's Moving the Chains coming up next with Eddie RADOSEVICH. All right, it's everyone's favorite segment of the show. It is Moving the Chains, where Eddie RADOSEVICH, for the second time this season, is going to attempt
to be better than my first
to get a first down.
Yeah.
You got a first
You
down,
did
though.
get a first down.
I got a first down,
Yeah.
but then we fumbled it. It was like it was an ode to the OU football season.
We had high expectations, and even though you got the first down, maybe you could have done better. So take 2. So we throw out questions. We grade the answers with positive or negative yardage, and let's kick this thing off. All right. Flag planting was a popular topic of conversation over rivalry weekend. If I make you the CFB commissioner, are there any flag planting rules?
Yeah, it would be you have to do it after you upset somebody as a 2-touchdown underdog, or if you just win the game. So I thought it was hilarious that Shane Beamer talked about Dabo calling him about how are we going to handle this stuff. It's such a soft move to even care about something like that.
Amen. Agreed. I agree. So yeah, great answer. 7-yard game, because I agree. It's you have to allow
start
it.
to the drive.
And the fact that you're not only allowing but you're requiring it, I mean, that's even better.
When you
So I like
plant it, though, everybody has to act like there's a shockwave,
Absolutely.
right? Like that
Absolutely.
should be a must.
I like that.
Celebration.
So we'll say 2nd and 3.
Okay.
2nd and 3. What bowl games are you going to? Or what
Something.
you want them to go to?
Well, this is a very personal thing, but I want them to be done either before Christmas or way after Christmas, so I can be here for Christmas. Haven't done that in a couple years.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think any of the Florida ones would be awesome.
Great.
Gasparillo, or maybe even the Gators been thrown out there. I know Brett Murphy threw it out there. Anything but Birmingham Bowl. No offense to the people of Birmingham.
Yep.
We're going to be spending a lot of time down in the Southeast over the next few years. Just don't send me to Birmingham.
Not
please.
Birmingham and not Shreveport.
Yes.
Those are the 2.
Well, I don't know. Shreveport would be kind of fun because it would be so bad.
They got some river boats that might be a little.
We'd have to explore.
If you could get USC in the Birmingham Bowl, is that a thumbs up?
Yeah, sure. But is Lincoln Riley going to be there? Isn't he linked to the Central Florida?
That's right.
Somebody going to
Which I
Orlando.
thought was fun.
Yeah. You want the yardage there, or do you want me to give it to him?
Go for it.
Okay, I'll give him a first down, because I agree. So already a
You
first
guys are
down.
covered anyways.
Well,
All right.
exactly. We're going
You
to be
got
there
one,
anyway.
yeah.
And we want to be home for Christmas, so we got that. So 1st and 10 again. Let's go. This is a fun one for me, because I'm curious what your answer is. Biggest letdown position group at OU, and maybe the biggest surprise in a good way for OU.
The biggest letdown was quarterback. I mean, I think that there was so many expectations placed on Jackson Arnold this year, and it just never came to be. And I think that, as we talked about earlier, it was a problem with a lot of things, but I think just from a development standpoint, that was disappointing, which goes back into the quarterback coach stuff. The most surprising, I think it was probably the defensive line. I think that you didn't really know what you were going to get, and Jaden Jackson lived up to the billing as a true freshman.
Yeah.
You saw development with David Stone. He started coming on towards the end of the season. Other teams from outside of the conference are coming after guys like a Grayson Halton because of the season that he had, and we'll see where DJ Terry ends up in the grand scheme of things, whether he gets invited to the Senior Bowl and that kind of stuff, and you can even expand that to Ethan Downs. He's had a phenomenal year.
Yeah, no doubt. You like that?
I'm going to give you 5 yards. Yeah, I debated offensive line being the biggest letdown, but we also didn't have giant expectations for the offensive line.
Yeah.
So
that's where I was going with that question.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to do it. So I'll give you 5 yards on that.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, so you're attempting to pick up 2 first downs in your 4 downs here.
Or a touchdown. Could happen.
I can do that.
What are Eddie Radosevich's holiday season gift-giving guidelines? Do you have any rules for the holiday seasons, whether it's re-gifting or go-to gifts or things not to do?
Yeah, re-gifting. I think if it's a very obvious thing with a family member and they know that you've re-gifted that's kind of a give-up. I think another give-up that I subscribe to, so I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this, the gift card thing. I usually find the gift cards in the bottom of the sack that are placed into the corner of the room at some point in March.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I forgot I had these. So sometimes if you've fallen on hard times, maybe lost a couple parlays on a Tuesday night in college basketball, you get that Chick-fil-A gift card back out. Not saying it's bad, I just think it's a give-up option.
This sounds like you're speaking from personal experience.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Not
Gambling's illegal in this state.
Allegedly. Yeah, first down. First down, definitely, because I appreciate you bringing in some personal experiences.
Right, exactly.
That was good. And
relatable experiences for the viewer.
Yeah, that was good. So first down, 2 first downs for
Very nice. Not only did he get
ball.
first down, let's plant the flag, right?
I'm moving the ball right now.
Boom.
And then I'll jump
Yes,
back.
and we got the shot flag.
There we go.
That might deserve a 3rd first down. So
Nice.
well done.
Good acting.
On this edition of Moving the Chains. Along with TJ Eckert, I'm Colby Daniels. Eddie Radosevich joins us as we get to our weekend game picks next. Heading into championship weekend, we will make our game picks momentarily. But first, as we always do, let's look at the embarrassment that we were last week.
Good idea. Let's
making selections as TJ 2 and 3 for you.
Oh, hey, you
3
made
and
money.
2 for me.
Yeah, you made some money.
A little bit.
You are solidly making money on Vegas this year, I think, right?
I'm about down the middle as we take a look at the overall standings.
I feel like you. Yeah.
I think I'm 2 games above 500.
Yeah, okay.
31 and 29.
We are not. We're in a hole.
That's why every week is a new week.
Do you know a guy?
We
This is what happens when you get behind, though. You got to start, taking some long shots, and then you just get further and further buried. All right, let's talk Maction. One of the big games this weekend. Ohio, Miami, Ohio.
So Miami, Ohio won the regular season matchup, I believe, correct? I don't remember how much they won by.
That's right.
It's hard to beat a good team twice. I think they end up doing it, though, so I'll take Miami of Ohio to cover.
I'm going to go on the other way. Can't go against an Oklahoman and Tim Albin.
Yep.
Head coach for Ohio. They've had really good success recruiting the state of Oklahoma. Let's go with the Bobcats this weekend.
I'll take Ohio as well. Tough to beat a team twice in one season. Game number 2 in the Big 12, an intriguing game that essentially is for a college playoff berth.
Hard to believe that Arizona State's here. That's impressive. But I think Iowa State, with the experience of being here before and they're an underdog, I'll take the Cyclones.
Rocco Beck's the best quarterback that you don't know about. He happens to play under center for Iowa State.
You can't have a newcomer win your league, right? Iowa State gets it done at Jerry World. In the ACC, Clemson, SMU. This is also a big one.
Hard to believe SMU's a favorite in this one, but give me Rhett Lashley. Why not? The Ponies are a fun story.
I think that Clemson's been here before. They've done it before. Give me Kate Klubenik, who is actually playing pretty good football right now.
SMU hasn't played anybody. I do think they're good, but I think the overall athleticism of Clemson is going to be a problem. Give me Clemson with the upset. In the Big Ten, Penn State, Oregon.
Dylan Gabriel's got something going up there. Both these teams are probably worse than what they appear to be, but I think I'll take the Ducks here.
Give me James Franklin and Penn State. There's something about Penn State this year that everybody's kind of discounted them, and I think Oregon wins the game, but Penn State covers the 3.5.
Okay.
Oregon doesn't really separate from people, which
haven't.
concerns me a little bit. I am surprised that you went against Penn State for the first time this season.
Maybe emotional hedge.
But give me the Ducks. I do think they're the better team, and I think they'll take care of business. And finally, in the SEC, a rematch, Georgia-Texas.
I've been picking Penn State every week and picking against Texas pretty much every week, but I'm going to take the Horns. Why not?
There's something about this game that I just can't get away from thinking that Texas and the offensive quote-unquote problems they've had. Quinn Ewers, I think he turns the ball over a couple times. Georgia takes advantage of that just like they did in Austin.
I think it's close either way. I'll take the points like I did,
fair.
I think, the last time that these two teams played. Eddie, we appreciate it as always.
Absolutely.
Everybody have a great
Thanks, Ed.
championship weekend, and we'll be back next week.